Hi, my name is Alexey Archipenko. Today I'd like to show you an example of using 4 new libraries to create a jazz blues track. You have already heard an excerpt from the track, and as usual you can listen to the whole track using the link below the video or on my site that is printed on this slide. Also, you can download the score CoreBass project and MIDI on my site. In contrast to my previous jazz tutorials, I selected libraries that are very easy to use, that are intuitive, and yet they sound great and have a lot of functions. I use Flute, Piano and Bass by Orchestra samples and Addictive drums by XLN Audio. So as usual, the track was created in Sibelius, then exported into MIDI and imported into CoreBass. In CoreBass, each instrument has its own track, and in each track there is one contact instance, and in each instance there is one instrument. So for each instrument there is only one channel used. Okay, so let's talk about the Passion Flute first. Here is the Orchestra site. Here is some technical information about the instrument. Also you can download the user guide. So what is interesting about Passion Flute? The first thing is that it has very airy attack sounds with round robins and several dynamic layers. They sound like this. And you can control amount of air in the attack with MIDI velocity or with continuous control, which controls dynamics. And so here's the round robin. The other interesting thing about the library is that it shows fingering of each note, which helps you to understand if it is easy or not to play some trill, for example, or some fast passages. Also it shows the amount of air that is left, and although you can play even if there is no more air, but this amount of air is used to trigger the samples of breath after you finish the phrase. Several key switches are used. These key switches allow you to use some effects and noises, and these key switches allow you to change dynamic range and trigger some breath noises. There are almost 200 phrases and effects recorded. I will show some of them so that you understand what is included. So the first key switch allows you to use some percussive sounds which are associated with some particular notes. The second C sharp and D key switches allow you to use some phrases and noises and trills and so on. Okay, here are the key switches. This flute has a lot of microphones, 5 of them. These are 2 close mics, one mid mic, and two room mics left and right. Each mic can be sent to some effect, equalizer, compressor, saturation, distortion, flanger, delay, reverb, and you can control the settings for flanger, delay, and reverb in a separate lane. You can also control the amount of each microphone, and you can send different microphones to different audio outputs. Okay, now the most interesting thing about the instrument is that it has a lot of continuous controls that can be assigned to the to controlling some parameters of the flute. The first thing is expression. It is just the dynamics or volume of the microphone. I do not use it. The second thing is dynamics. This is how loud the flute is playing. Also, you can change if attack is controlled with this dynamics knob or with the MIDI velocity. And you can see that some of the parameters have auto switches. So you can switch them on and do not control them. This is useful for some live playing or maybe for some sketches. This way the algorithm uses its own parameters. It guesses which parameters are better, which dynamics is better, vibrato, and so on. In this particular case, I control dynamics with 11th continuous control, vibrato speed with 19th, vibrato depth with the first continuous control, and harmonics with 20th. There is also vibrato delay that is used just for the automatic control. This is a delay from when a note begins to when the automatic vibrato kicks in. Also, I can control the key noises, but I do not use this control. I leave it auto. Okay, now let's see how the flute is sequenced. You can see that it starts with the lowest possible dynamics, with no vibrato and with lowest vibrato speed, and also without any harmonics. And also it has a pitch band control that starts at 0. So these first notes, their dynamics is controlled with MIDI velocity because they have only the attacks. They're very short, so there is no sustain note there. The dynamics increases, then there is some more longer note. Here you see that I use some harmonics in fast changing notes, but generally it almost does not change the sound. Just a little bit, maybe. Here I use a little vibrato at the end of the sample. A little more vibrato. And more vibrato. You can see that I break the line here. So I do not use legato transitions that are automated with a script, but I use a new attack note. So in this case, this and these notes, their attacks are controlled with MIDI velocity, and MIDI velocity also controls a legato attack, but it is very subtle. For example, if you increase it a lot, it sounds like this. So you hear key sounds. If you decrease it, then you do not hear the key sounds, okay? Okay, now vibrato. Then fall in the end. Some more phrase with the crescendo and diminuendo. You can see that I use vibrato at the end of the diminuendo note. And this creates some effect of vibrating fall or vibrating end of the sample. Also, you can hear the dynamics at the minimum level of the instrument is not very low. And this could be a problem for some classic compositions, but for jazz and blues there is okay. Now you can see two repeated notes, and to decrease the machine gun effect, to make this note sound different, I use several techniques. The first is I use different MIDI velocity to create different attacks. Then I use harmonics for a second attack, which is generally overblowing the note. And also I use different dynamics. It sounds like this. Of course, one more important thing is that they have different length. If the notes had the same length, then I usually decrease the length of the first, for example, note and increase the length of the second, so that they have different lengths and they sound not like the machine gun. Now you can see a repeated phrase, but it has different length of the second note, so it doesn't need some particular treatment like anti-machine gun. At the end of the note there is some harmonics, and you should understand that when you increase some harmonics, when you create this overblown sound, it is usually created when the musician, the flutist, plays really hard, so when the dynamics is at the maximum or like this. So usually you want to increase this harmonic slider when dynamics is at maximum, like this. Another phrase with a lot of vibrato. And you can hear how the vibrato is spitting down here. You can even decrease the speed, like this, for example. Here is a grace note, and in this particular case it has a lot of attack. It sounds a little bit strange, but in the mix it is interesting. Two more grace notes. One more example of repeating note. Here is an example for alternating between legato and accent transitions. So each second note is reduced in length so that each note after it has attack. One more example of repeating notes. And now there are several repeated phrases. You can see that this melody is repeated several times with some differences. And here is repeating without differences. And you see that to create some difference, there is no difference in notes and length, so that I create a difference in performance. I decreases the length of some notes and created some accents. For example, here the first and the last note have accents. Here the first and the third note, the first, second and the last. And here the first and second. And the last, by the way. But with different note. And it sounds like this. So changing the position of accent in melody, if the melody is repeated, helps to decrease the machine gun effect. One more thing here is that I use pitch bend to decrease the pitch, to bend down the flute. Well, it sounds not so very natural, because maybe it will be difficult to bend like this, but in these cases you can think like if you want to create some interesting sound, or you need to create very realistic sound. If you're not sure and you need very realistic performance, then maybe you can not just use these things. But if you need interesting sound, you can use some more effects, even maybe use some effects that are difficult to perform or maybe impossible to perform in some particular situations. I showed these examples also in my tutorial called Wake Up. You can see there are some effects in cello. Okay, here are more harmonics. And by the way, harmonics are used to change the accents and change the repeating phrases. By the way, one more important thing here is that swing rhythm was created by Sibelius. I just printed a swing and then Sibelius decreased the length of each second quaver. And this swing rhythm helps to create anti-machine gun melodies also, because you see that here melody starts with on the downbeat and here on the upbeat. So these notes are shorter. So note start positions are shifted. Some more repeats. Vibrato and falling. And some long phrase. You can see that the instrument thinks there is not enough air for it, but generally flutists can play this if it takes more air. And at the end of the piece I use some effects. These are pre-recorded phrases that are triggered with a key switch and the note. And it sounds like this. So they're triggered at the same time with a fade out. Also you can see that I use some very subtle changes in pitch. For example here, it is almost inaudible, but it decreases the sharpness of the end of the sample. Like this. One more interesting thing is that I had to synchronize the rhythm, the positions of the first flute samples, and the stick sound. The problem here is that there are only two instruments sounding, and each instrument has very clear and accurate attack. And in this case, if attacks are placed in different places, it sounds not in rhythm like this. For example, if I leave it like it was at the beginning. So you can hear that the flute is behind the rhythm. This is why I moved the note start to the left. In other places I did not use this because there are a lot of instruments playing and different attack times. They have different attack times, and not all attacks are that clear, and this all creates that swing, and there is no problem. So you just need to listen, and if you hear some rhythm problems, then you need to correct them. If you do not hear them, then you can leave these problems. You can leave that different attacks. You do not need to synchronize everything to ideally to be ideal with metronome like this. Okay. So talking about the flute, I should say that it has very interesting sound for jazz, blues, and maybe ethnic and some electronic tracks. and it is not for some classical pieces maybe. Let's move to the piano now. Here is the piano part. Here is a plugin. So this piano has a lot of dynamics, and 2 round robins, and you can see that it consumes 1.24 gigabytes of RAM, and you can control this decreasing the number of dynamic layers and round robins like this, for example. Also, you can decrease number of microphones used to 1 microphone, and then you get 228 megabytes. Also, talking about the processor usage, you can decrease the polyphony limit, and in this case only the notes that have the lowest sounding amplitude will be cut. You can decrease the sympathetic resonance, which is effectively adding sound of some other strings to the sound of the played strings. And also you can change the damper impulse. You can decrease its quality or turn it off. So you can see that there are a lot of there is a lot of control over the RAM and CPU usage. So these things, polyphony resonance and damper impulse, they will decrease the usage of processor if you need it. Okay, talking about the microphones, there are 2 microphones. You can change balance between these microphones like this. You can invert the phase, and you can control the width of these microphones. There is a stereo width. In my particular case, I decreased the width because I did not need in this track to feel like the piano is just near the listener. I needed it to be somewhere in the stereo stage on the left. Okay, now here you can change some levels. There is the noise floor. This is noise that is added to the performance because the initial noise is deleted from the samples. There is also pedal noise, hammer releases, and damper ambience. You can control velocity response, low limit, high limit, and also important thing is that you have some humanization. There is randomization of MIDI velocity, effectively. In my particular case, I used both this humanization and I also used some randomization on MIDI velocity using my scripts. Also, Orange Tree sample instruments usually have a lot of effects. So you have EQ, compress, and reverb. You can control them. Okay, so now returning to the track, you can see that the positions are randomized using my scripts. The scripts are downloadable from my site. Here is my site and the article here, and at the end of the article you can download the scripts that can be used in Cubase for randomizing. Or you can do it yourself using MIDI and logical editor. And the important thing here is that you should not randomize very much because it can sound unnatural. In this case I used some, I think I used about 30 points, not 100 but 30, minus 30 plus 30 points here, or maybe 10. And after applying this randomization, do not forget to delete overlaps, mono, so that there are no overlaps like this, or the notes will be released before the release that you wanted. Now let's see the solo. You can see that it is in a different channel. It's the 4th channel, but it is just for the convenience, of viewing, because the whole track is routed to the 1st channel. So this 4th channel is not routed. You can see that I use this run. By the way, for some reason the note moved. And I decrease the dynamics of this run at the end. Also, you can see that I change dynamics, alternating between high and low dynamics, and usually I use higher dynamics for the downbeat and lower dynamics for upbeat. Okay, let's talk about bass now. It is an upright bass, which sounds like this. It has legato samples, so I use legato, for example, here. There is control over the legato range. This is a range that triggers legato. It triggers. And this one does not trigger. This one still triggers. Okay. So you can see that you can control if legato is triggered or not using this legato range control. These controls can be mapped, but I do not use mapping here. I only map one control. And this is slide speed, so that I increase the slide speed here. Also, you can control if the overlapping of notes leads to usual legato or slides. You can press sustain pedal like this, and there will be a slide. It can be controlled here, so you can change which continuous control controls the sliding. Also, you can see that I use some sinusoidal pitch randomization so that this bass sounds more out of tune. Also, I use some bands here. They bend approximately to half a tone. And also you can see that here touching of notes doesn't lead to legato sound. It sounds like this, for example, if the notes touch. And if you want legato, then you need to overlap them. And in the passion flute, it is vice versa. So you do not need to overlap the notes, and it is enough to touch, for example, like this. You can hear that there is no attack, no airy attack like this. So you should remember this thing. This is of course convenient, but this is needed to be remembered. Okay, also what is interesting about the bass is that it has a lot of effects and some percussive sounds, mutes like this, harmonics. And also it has some muting of the strings, like this. Also you can select the strings that you need to use. when you increase the MIDI velocity very much, you can hear this particular sound, some percussive sound. Also, you can change hand position and do it with continuous control. You can change tuning. There are some different tunings: fifth, low D, low C. And you can control the levels of releases, fret slides, legato noises, and so on. Okay, now let's go to the drums. And here you can see that I have the whole pattern here. And here is the plugin. It is not Contact, but also VST. This plugin has a lot of kits, and you buy each kit separately. Also, when you select the kit, you can listen to some rhythms at once. You can change some dynamics of I think this is just the levels of microphones of each kit, of each piece. Also, you can check the kit and control dynamics of each piece, change some pieces, mute, solo. This is changing. You can edit it, and here you can change response, pitch, control volume envelope, cut, control which microphones are used. In this case, there are only overheads. And also there are some effects: compression, distortion, equalizer, tape, shape, and so on. And of course you can control the overhead, the room, microphones, and so on. By the way, here you can change the overhead and the room levels. So for each kit there are a lot of sounds mapped, and you can listen to them just changing the pitch of your note. Different hits, and this particular kit is hit with brushes. Also, you can hear that there are brush sounds moving over the snare. This is very interesting. They are long, but they have a tag. So using these samples, these are two samples that I used, you can create this sound of moving over the snare, circular movement, and it sounds like it was being pre-recorded. Okay, so I did not create all this manually. I imported the beats from the plugin. So this is very important. There are a lot of beats in the plugin. They are categorized by the kits. So for example, you can choose these jazz brush grooves, and there are a lot of beats. They have different tempos. You can listen to them. And you can sync tempo. So the tempo is synced to the host. Also, you can sync it to the play stop, and this way it is very convenient to create some sketches, because you just sync it and it starts each time in some particular place. It looks like this. I'll mute these notes. And you can see that when I play it, it starts somewhere inside the loop. Okay, so it is very convenient, but of course you cannot change this beat conveniently in this plugin. Although there is some transforming, and you can even drag something up and down in dynamics, or you can apply some tuning randomization, velocity randomization, timing randomization, velocity randomization. You can change accents, but of course that is not everything that you usually do with the loop. So the most convenient thing is that you can take the loop that you like and just drag it into a DAW like this, and then you can edit it. The only thing to remember is just to turn the transformation off, disable it, because if you enable transforming, then it doesn't import correctly for some reason. Maybe just for me, but it is a little problem. But generally it is not a problem, because the loops that are not transformed already contain some randomization. I think they were recorded manually with some maybe electronic kit, but you can see that these start positions are very different, and so they are somehow maybe randomized just by playing manual, I think. So you really do not need this transforming. Or maybe you can add some randomization in your host. Okay, so I imported 2 different bits, and then I moved the changing bits, changing measures like this. Because I have blues, it has 12 measures, and these beats were 8 measure jazz. So here was the accent, but I moved it here. So I just swapped these measures, this one and this one. So I did it in every place where I needed some accents. Here is the second beat that was imported, and then I returned to the previous beat after some accent again. Okay, now let's talk about mixing and mastering of the track. You can see that the sound levels are approximately the same. The instruments, the piano is a little bit lower. So talking about the stereo panning, I panned the flute to the right 30, panned piano to the left 30, bass in the middle, and drums also have their own stereo panning, pre-recorded. Although you could decrease maybe the stereo panning of the drums, because it is very, very big. Okay, so to decrease the stereo width of these Addictive drums, they have some very handy stereo panning controls. They look like usual panning controls, and they move to the left and to the right, which is convenient. But also you can move up and down. And moving up, you increase the width, and moving down, you decrease the width. Also, you can reverse the width this way. Reverse the panning. So it means that you send, for example, the left channel to the right and the right channel to the left. And it sounds like this. So now I decreased the stereo width to 0, almost to 0. It sounds somewhere in the middle. Now I can move it to the left. To the right. Also I can move it to center and revert the stereo panning. So by the way, when I do not revert the panning, you hear the hi-hat is at the left. And when I revert it, you hear that hi-hat is at the right. So this is more correct, by the way. So I think we can decrease the panning and revert it a little bit, like this. Let's hear the full track. Also, I needed to decrease the general level of drums after changing the stereo panning. Okay, so this is the stereo panning. Then I have everything sent to the main bus. Here I have 2C ether. This is the reverb. It is Jazzy Lounge with small living room. Very effective for jazz, and it is creating some small room. You can hear that there is not very much difference between the dry sound and sound with this reverb. But of course there is some echo, there is some reverbing. And there is the limiter, of course, that is limiting just a little bit. I use oversampling and some decrease output level. Also in this track I use fading out. It is at the end and it fades to 0, and it is just fading out the master volume, the main volume. It's the last knob in the whole chain after all the effects and so on. Also in this track I use a little bit of tempo randomization. You can see that it is very subtle. It's about 1 BPM, and the period is about 45 seconds, I think. And when I increased the amplitude of these tempo changes, I began to hear it. So I decreased so that is almost inaudible. Okay, so this is a track, and I should say that I created it pretty fast because all the instruments were very simple, very intuitive, and on the other hand I had a lot of instruments. I had a lot of continuous controls that I could use, and some bending in bass and so on. So I think that these instruments save time without decreasing the quality of the product. So I can recommend them. Thank you, and I'm waiting for you in my future videos.